Anything you say will be recorded. So, preparing the standard curves. Preparing standard curve. Samples. Now, remind me how many wells we dedicated for a standard curve? 16, but it's basically 16 because it's 2 of them. So if you remember, it's basically 8 different wells for each standard curve. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So basically this is standard curve 1, standard curve 2. Okay. So we're going to start with a very high concentration and go all the way down to 8 dilutions. So how do I prepare that? I will grab 8 microcentrifuge tubes. The very first one, I want it to be 1,000 picograms per ml. And I'm going to prepare 1,000 microliters. So, 1,000 picograms per ml of what? I'm preparing a solution which contains 100,000 picograms per ml of TNF-alpha, right? That's what I want to measure, right? Okay. So how can I prepare that? Remember, I've shown you that they give you in a vial an exact amount, an exact mass of TNF-alpha, which you reconstitute. You basically prepare a very concentrated solution of TNF-alpha. So I'm going to say, and I have it in the freezer, I'm going to say here's my tube where I have a 50 picogram per microliter of TNF-alpha. So somehow I need to transition from this one to this one. Right? What do you think we're going to use? We're going to use the magic dilution formula. And we're going to solve for V1. What's my C2? What am I trying to prepare? 1,000 picograms per ml. What's the volume? We said 1,000 microliters. And what's my stock concentration? This one, right? The 50 picograms per microliter. 50 picograms per microliter. The only problem is the top one is picograms per milliliter, and the bottom one is picograms per microliter. So I'm going to convert it to milliliter, which we know it's 1,000 microliters per milliliter. So this cancel out, and now I have picograms per milliliter and picograms per milliliter. Beautiful. Okay, the 1,000 cancels this one, cancels this one cancels this one, and this one. So it's basically 100 divided by 5, which is 20 microliters, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. So I need to put in 20 microliters of antibody. And then the remaining, now this is a situation where you need to be exact, the remaining 980 with a buffer called assay diluent. So it needs to be assay diluent. It's just a buffer. So 20 and 980 gives me what? 1,000. Good. And what would the concentration of the first tube be? Tube number 1. 1,000 picograms per ml. Now, the remaining I want to do the following. I want this one to be 500 picograms per ml, this one to be 250, this one to be 125, then it's 62.5, and then it's going to be 31 to 50, and then it becomes 15, and then it's 7. Doesn't matter. Towards the end, you get the idea, right? You're preparing 8 different dilutions. You start with a very high, and you go to a very low. Now, you have the option of sitting and of repeating what we just did another 7 times. Not a good idea, right? Why would you want to do it? You only do that when you don't have a life, when you don't want to be home at 5 o'clock. Okay? So that's an option too. It's a free country. You can do anything you want. So I tell you a little trick. If I fill up this with just plain buffer, I fill it up with plain buffer, and I'm choosing an arbitrary amount of 300 microliters. So I'm already pre-filling everything with 300 microliters. So I'm filling it up with 300 microliters of buffer. Does the buffer contain the TNF-alpha? No, right? It's just a plain buffer, boring buffer. So, but here's the trick. I'm going to transfer from the very first tube, I'm going to transfer 300. So I have 300 microliters of something that contains 1000 picograms per ml of TNF-alpha. And I mix it with 300 of microliters of liquid which contains nothing. What do you think happens to the concentration? Is it going to go up? Is it going to stay the same? It's going to be halved, right? So with this little trick, I was able to drop from 1000 to 500. Okay? So, and then from this one, after I mix it a few times, I'm going to transfer another 300 to the neighboring tube and do the same thing. And I do this till I reach the last tube. This is called serial dilution. So this is called serial dilution. Any questions? No, the last one is going to end up with 6. Yeah, all of them, they're going to have the 300. But once you go through the process of serially diluting, the last one is going to end up with a total volume of 600 microliters. All the rest are going to have 300 microliters, except the first one, which is going to have 1000 minus 300, is going to have 700. I'm talking about volumes here. But the concentrations are going to be the ones which I want, which are essentially 1000 picograms per ml, 500 picograms per ml, 250 picograms per ml. So with this little technique, you don't sit down and calculate and carry out 8 different concentrations, right? So let me give you an example. Let's say what you have as a stack concentration for TNF-alpha is at 35 picograms per microliter, and you are asked to prepare 8 different dilutions starting with 2000 picograms per ml. So again, you're going to prepare 1000 microliters. Why don't you go over? Oh my god, I don't think it was recorded. It's crazy. All these airport things. Okay, so why don't you do that? I think it wasn't recording my voice.